Awesome. So I hope some of our Universalist ancestors inspire you. Clara Barton, Annie B. Jordan Willis. Today, as you heard, I'm talking about the Universalist part of Unitarian Universalism, which, as they said, joined in 1961. So you may have heard this quote before, but I'll repeat it. Some of you may know it. Whereas Unitarians, especially in the early 19th century America, believed that people like themselves were too good to be damned, Universalists believed that God was too good to damn them, that all could be saved. At the Universalist Gloucester Centennial of 1870, Edward Everett Hale, who was actually a Unitarian, expressed this very Universalist sentiment in the following way. He said, if America is to succeed, it is because God is love and loves each and all of his children. This message of universal salvation, that all can be saved, that all are loved, has been preached in some form or another in America since John Murray, who is the founder of the first American Universalist church in Massachusetts at the end of the 18th century. This message of universal love has been preached. And over the generations, the message has changed. As you heard, it started as a Protestant, Christ-centered message of salvation from sin. And it's changed into what we know today as more of a universal humanist message of liberation for all. Yet its foundation remains consistent. Universal salvation, universal liberation is available for all. But what is often missed is this. At its core, Universalism is also about sacrifice. Early Universalists tied this sacrifice to the sacrifice of Christ. Today, we embody it in the sacrifices we make for each other's liberation. Compassion, empathy, and action. These are the ways salvation for all becomes real. Universalism has never been just about being saved. It has always also been about action. This morning I'd like to connect 18th century liberal religion in America to this moment today in order to better understand how the idea of universal salvation manifests today in the 21st century, particularly through the lens of social justice, of action. So Benjamin Rush, he was a signer of our Declaration of Independence, and he was an early convert to Universalism. He wrote to Unitarian Richard Price the following. He wrote, "These principles, my dear friend, have bound me to the whole human race. These are the principles which animate me in all my labors for the interests of my fellow creatures. No particle of benevolence, no wish for the liberty of a slave or the reformation of a criminal, none will be lost. They must all be finally made effectual, for they all flow from the great author of goodness who implants no principles of action in man in vain." And Rush connects Universalist theology directly to the social issues of his day, of the time, slavery and prison reform. Today, we have similar issues in modern-day slavery and abolition. He understood more broad abolition. He understood that a faith of universal salvation demanded benevolence toward others, toward all. He made this even more explicit in a letter to Reverend Jeremy Belknap, opposing the death penalty. Quote, "A belief in God's universal love to all his creatures, and that he will finally restore all those of them that are miserable to happiness, is a polar truth. It establishes the quality of humankind. It abolishes the punishment of death for any crime and converts jails into houses of repentance and repair." Would that that were true. From the beginning, Universalism required attention to human dignity. It required attention to justice, and it required attention to reform. And it must require those things today, especially now, as well. Social conscience is a through line. Ernest Cassara, in his book Universalism in America, A Documentary History of a Liberal Faith, writes, "It should be expected that a gospel which preached the ultimate salvation of every single individual in the future life would be concerned with the lot of every individual on earth." Indeed, Universalists throughout history, Benjamin Rush, Horace Greeley, Clara Barton, Annie Willis, and many others, insisted that belief in salvation for all demanded action for justice here and now. That's our Universalist heritage. In the 20th century, Clarence Skinner, who I read at the beginning, he was a Universalist professor and a minister, argued in an essay called The Social Implications of Universalism in 1915. He argued the Universalist idea of God is that of a universal, of an impartial, of an immanent spirit whose nature is love. It is the largest thought the world has ever known. It is the most revolutionary doctrine ever proclaimed, is what he argued. It is the most expansive hope ever dreamed. Skinner understood that theology and social order shape each other. The more we embrace a universal and a loving spirit, the more we are driven towards democracy, equality, and justice. And this thinking culminated in the 1917 Universalist General Convention's social program. And it declared the church's purpose to be the reconstruction of the world's civilization in terms of justice and peace and righteousness, so that the spiritual life of all may develop to its fullest capacity. That is also our Universalist heritage. The program demanded equity in housing and education, in food, in economic opportunity. It condemned exploitation, and it condemned war. It sought to address not just the results of injustice, but it sought to address something that we still need to address desperately, its root causes. Universalism, in other words, has always insisted, if all can be free, then all must be free. Today, our understanding of Universalism has deepened as well, and I would say in two crucial ways. First, we are realizing that we cannot only look outward at society's injustices and what's happening terribly out there. We must look inward at our own complicity. True equity requires honest reckoning with our own participation in systems of harm. And second, we are expanding the very definition of humanity. For too long, and even to today, white supremacy defines whose humanity counts. Now we are learning, hopefully through struggle and accountability, that every human being, especially those long marginalized, must be embraced equally and equitably. Now, the present government in Washington may try and is trying to halt this expansion of thought and heart and mind and spirit at any cost, but it cannot succeed. Their ferocity in restricting rights only confirms how powerful this shift is. If our awareness of equality and our awareness of universal acceptance and love weren't growing, if our solidarity with others, our interdependence, our solidarity weren't deepening, they wouldn't be so afraid. As James Luther Adams put it, the faith of free persons must tangibly make them free in a community of human dignity and equal justice. So this mandate expressed clearly in a report that was written in 2020 at one of our General Assemblies called Widening the Circle of Concern. Many of you probably heard of it. It was written by the Unitarian Universalist Association Commission on Institutional Change. The report centers marginalized voices, and it insists that the true Universalist faith requires truth-telling and compassion and accountability from others and from ourselves. Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt explains, only a Universalist theology of liberation in the present day centers our capacity to be sanctuaries of radical truth-telling and abundant compassion, so that the all-embracing love at the center of our tradition that I talked about can serve to make all of us more whole. We have to be accountable for ourselves, even so that the love can make everybody whole. The report reminds us that compassion means, literally, compassion means to suffer with. It calls us to sacrifice comfort and privilege so that others may be free of burdens long imposed upon them. Dr. Elias Ortega, who is going to speak here in January, actually, who is the president of Meadville Lombard Theological School, where I got my degree, writes, if we believe in collective salvation, our Universalist collective salvation, we must also believe in collective sacrifice, collective action with sacrifice. And Reverend Dr. Betancourt warns us there is no winnowing out of the supposedly unworthy that can be named sacred among us. It is our very universalism that is at stake when we turn away from the impact our institutions have on the same communities and groups that society encourages us to dehumanize and to make small. We have to look at how we take part in that. So from Benjamin Rush in the 18th century to Clarence Skinner in the 20th century to the voices of Betancourt and Ortega and the Commission today, this line is unbroken. Universalism, therefore, is not passive hope. It is active liberation. It is faith in love that demands justice. Our tradition tells us salvation is not reserved for a chosen few. And that's where the word universalism came from, universal salvation. It is not reserved for a chosen few. It is for all. But if salvation is for all, then our task is clear. We are called to make freedom real, here and now, for every human being, despite the risks and with accountability. We live in fearful times. Civil rights are under assault. Hard-won freedoms are being stripped away. And voices of hate are rising to drown out voices of compassion. But universalism has faced this before, at this level and maybe even greater. Each time the world has tried to narrow love, to make it smaller, to exclude, to deny dignity, Universalists have proclaimed love cannot be bound. Ours is a faith that insists on the worth of every person, the dignity of every soul, and the liberation of every community. And the hate mongers cannot undo that truth. The oppressors cannot silence that song. Our task as heirs of Universalism is to live as though universal love is real, because it is. To act as though liberation is possible, because it is. To sacrifice so that others may be free, knowing that in their freedom we too are freed. And so, let us face these fearful times, not with despair, but with courage. Let us face these cowards with our own courage. Let us rise with the certainty that the arc of faith, like the arc of the moral universe, bends towards justice. Let us widen the circle again and again and again until no one is left outside of it. This is our call. This is our hope. This is our universalism. Unbroken, unshaken, unstoppable. Thank you. Thank you.